Sorry that the live viewers have to hear this again. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the HGC Post-Show. I'm Cavalier Guest, and we're just going to go over the different regions that happen, some of the games. There's been a big request lately for people who can't keep up with every single game in every single region. Obviously, there's a lot of them to highlight some of the best games per region, telling people what they should watch from the previous week. And we're going to start out with China. Honestly, a lot of the China games were pretty one-sided. E-Star versus X-Team, 3-1. X-Team's a reasonably good team. The nice thing about China is you're going to see some unusual picks. A lot of their picks are very, very standard. They have the variant. They play the Morales. They play the Tyrael, the Zarya. We see those picks in other regions, but occasionally we do see the Illidan as well. We see heroes like Zagara. We see Murky. We see Asmodan, as in this Tomb of the Spider Queen, Super Perfect Team versus KIS. We see a little bit different picks. So if you want to have a very different take on the meta, then HGC China is the reason to watch. But if you want to see a really close series of games, then I have to recommend Super Perfect Team versus Challenge Everything. This did end up going to a 3-2, but it was a series of really good games, some unusual hero picks, some cool macro strategies, a lot of brawling, as is normal for the Chinese scene. They always have that mix of macro and brawling where possible. But it was a really, really good series. And if you're gonna just pick one to watch, it would be that one. They are cast on Kendrick Swish's channel. They're not on the official Blizzard YouTube or Blizzard Twitch, so check them out. Right? HGC Korea, the match to watch is Tempest versus L5, no question whatsoever. Every other match this week was pretty one-sided. MB Black versus MB Miracle was the closest to not being one-sided, I guess would be the way to put it, but MB Black always carried it in the late game. And they always had late game drafts. They always knew they were going to win in the late game. Miracle was always going for some sort of, except for game 3, they were always going for some sort of tempo win. Where they just got ahead early because they knew that MB Black was so strong in the late game. They were trying to draft around that. In game 3, they were like, well, that's not working. Let's try something else. This is one of the things about best of fives. Teams will try a strategy for 2 games, and then when it's not working, they'll try a different strategy. Sometimes it works, and you end up going like all the way to a game 5. And sometimes it doesn't. But that was the closest to... This is the closest series that was almost close, and then Tempest versus L5 was actually a very close series. Mighty versus Raven and Mighty versus MB Black were fairly stompy. Not really worth watching. HGC Europe, we saw some rematches. Quite a few rematches, actually. But the series I'm going to run is actually Tricked versus Team Expert. It ended up being a 3-1. Team Expert has consistently been the number 4 team in EU. So the fact that Tricked managed to take them down, kind of a big deal. And I encourage you guys, if you're going to watch one series from EU, that's going to be it. Tricked Esport versus Synergy was really awkward in the fact that it took Tricked 5 games to beat 3-2 Synergy. Synergy showed a lot of sense of life in the very, very early game. I almost feel like Tricked hadn't warmed up during that. It seemed like their early game rotations were a little bit sloppy. And then HGC North America, Gale Force. This week was kind of interesting. We saw some surprises. We saw Superstars almost take the set against Tempo Storm. They were very, very close to winning. They made a bad core call in game 4. It should have been a 2-2 at that point, and then they should have forced to a game 5. I encourage you to watch at least that game 4, Tomb of the Spider Queen, Tempo Storm versus Superstars. But the big one here, I think, there's actually 2 of them. It's Gale Force Esports versus No Tomorrow. Because it's the upset of the century, as Dredd put it, the fact that Gale Force Esports, the number 2 team in the standings currently, lost to No Tomorrow, which is in the bottom. I'm not going to spoil it. Watch the game. Team 8 versus B-Step. There's actually a question about this, so we're going to get a little bit more in detail with it, but it's definitely a series worth watching. And now swapping over to the Reddit thread questions. A lot of questions, actually. Would be interesting to know what you think about the current EU versus Korea situation. There's a clear influence in the draft from both sides. For example, I believe that Korea started to pick Naz after EU showed him, and EU tries to make use of Zarya and Murden, who are highly prioritized in Korea now. Which region do you think shows a better understanding of the latest balance changes and which differences in the metas are most interesting at the moment? It's actually a pretty in-depth question. And it actually comes back to BlizzCon of last year. If it was MB Black and L5 Ballistics at the time show up to BlizzCon, and they kind of end up picking sister teams. MB Black does a lot of scrimming against Dignitas, and Fnatic does a lot of scrimming against Ballistic/L5, and they became really good friends. So now you have these two top Korean teams, two of the top EU teams are really good friends. They like scrimming against each other. They start to develop relationships, and they start to talk. Swoy and Bakery talk quite a bit now. A few of the other support players have like a thing where they regularly get together and chat about things. Dignitas boot camped in Korea and gathered quite a bit of respect from the Korean teams. So when you're talking about the Korean and the EU region in particular, there's communication at that level. It's not that these teams actually talk to each other now, and they'll log on to each other's servers occasionally, I believe, and play even with bad ping. Not necessarily serious games, but there's a huge amount of communication. So when you're talking about the high-level meta between these two regions, they're communicating. They're not only watching the HGC games and being like, oh yeah, we could do that. They are talking to each other directly about this information. So the meta from EU is influencing Korea, and the meta from Korea is influencing EU, because that's roughly where they are. Those top teams from EU and Korea are very close together in terms of how they're thinking about the game. And there definitely is influence going back and forth. Zarya Murden being a priority in Korea, and then having that come over to EU. Nazeebo being a situational pick on some maps that you can guarantee you get to the late game, and then you can carry with him, that we saw out of the EU teams that is starting to come over to Korea. I think we even saw this week the Naz pickup on Battlefield of Eternity, where you go for the spider build and you try and just poke the Immortal down from really far away. It's not level 20. Naz is not going to get enough stacks to finish Vile Infection. It's not the 20 power spike you're looking for. It's the 7 power spike, where you can guarantee the 5 spiders on just the Immortal, and you can just poke the Immortal down against a team that's defending. Right? I think we actually did see that this week. So that's definitely some influence going back and forth. And the reason is that these teams not only talk to each other, but now really respect each other because of these scrim results, because Fnatic beat MVB Black at BlizzCon, because they took the game off of L5. Teammate versus B-Step. In every game, B-Step was behind and Teammate looked very strong. B-Step managed to get a victory. How did they do it and why? YOLO. There's really no way to put this. B-Step picked the perfect opportunity to fight every time. Teammate was playing really, really cautiously. They were constantly, do we need to do this? Do we need to stay here? They were scared. I can't think of any other way to put it. Teammate was playing as if they were afraid of losing. And if you feel like you're the better team, that's actually not that unusual in a competitive setting. If you feel like you're the better team and you just want to make sure you close out the game no matter what, you're going to play safe. You're going to get to that late game. You're not going to do anything too crazy. You're not going to dive in. The problem is, if you get to the very, very late game, if both teams get to the point where it's late game, whoever takes one fight wins. That's all it takes. Just one fight and the game's over. And the reason Teammate was playing really, really carefully is because they lacked initiation from their warriors. You can see in game 5, they have Arthas solo tank. In game 3, they have Arthas solo tank. And not in game 1. In game 1, there was they just straight up lost because they lost to 2 globals in the late game. So game 1, they lost to 2 globals in the late game on Dragonshire. If you have 0 globals and the enemy team has 2, you should never win on Dragonshire. That's just how that map should go. But in game 3 and 5, it really came down to the fact that Teammate lacked initiation from their warrior players. They had VP as a good initiation tool, but with Tyrael, you always have that game of chicken, VP versus Sank. Whoever cast it first loses. It just did not work out for them. And that's really what it came down to, is they lacked the ability to really push and follow up, so they kept backing up and playing safe, hoping to close out the game. And then B-Step at some point was just like, we have the talents, we have enough people, we have the cooldowns, we have everything we need. Let's go take a fight and win it. And they went and took a fight and win it. And they got to pick the fight. This is why Arthas is not a tank. It is not that hard, honestly, to beat Arthas in the very, very late game as a tank, because you get to pick the fight and where you want to fight. And Teammate just thought they could do just Arthas for a front line, and it did not work out for them. What happens if 3 heroes don't clump up really tight next to a rag fort? Nothing bad, right? All right. So this is This is B-Step versus Tempo Storm on Infernal Shrines. Right? Am I crazy? No, it was Team Freedom. It was Team Freedom versus B-Step, right? No, it was Tempo Storm. It was Tempo Storm. This is Tempo Storm's game. Oh, it was versus Superstars. So we're gonna watch this. Just find this clip real quick. How badly did the loot chest RNG go? The loot chest RNG went fine. There we go. I don't think we need to go into the replay for this. It says the middle fort was down. I don't think this is it. Turn the sound on for the drag giggles. I'll turn the sound on for the drag giggles once it happens. I think it was the next turn in though, right? It was the next web weaver turn in after the one we're currently looking at. And you can see Goku starts to mount up, right? He starts to mount up right there. He's just moving on behind for the flank. The minion wave is far enough pushed out that they don't see it at all. And he's waiting in the bush. You can see he's waiting right there in the bush. And I don't think the casters got it either. I don't think anyone noticed that Goku just sort of wandered off.
In my opinion, what is one of the strongest level 1 talents in the entire game.
Yeah, especially because...
And there it is. Goku, max range, just barely comes out of the bush. And here's... We're gonna see this. The question is, how did they position to not have this happen? And you can see Cattle immediately tries to create space from his team. He just tries to get as far away as possible. We see Johanna with the Iron Skin making sure she can't get stunned. But everyone else groups right here. And they just feel stuck. Psalm, June, and Cawthon Luck all have the same impulse to try and get away up this valley, but then they can't because the Odin, they're all trying to dodge. And here we come into a sort of a funny thing about esports in general, that are these strategy tactical games. There's a concept in naval warfare called crossing the T. And basically it's that you have a line of ships, and because you have mobile turrets, you can kind of shoot wherever you want to, right? But there's a range limitation. And you don't want to hit your allies. So you line the ships up and you keep them relatively close together so that you can shoot wherever you need to without hitting your allies, right? The problem here is that another line of ships comes across in the front of your line. They can have their fore and aft guns both shoot you at the same time, and they can all shoot the front ship. And there's no danger that they're going to hit each other. This is called crossing the T. And it's a basic concept when you're thinking about lines of fire and arcs. If you're thinking about StarCraft, all casters when you're watching StarCraft talk a lot about whoever has the better arc kind of wins the fight because all of their damage is being applied, right? This concept of envelopment is really, really significant. And one of the things that doesn't get talked about enough when we're talking about Heroes of the Storm is positioning and the way heroes have to position to be safe. One of the reasons that Focus the Tank is such a good idea in a lot of ways is that if all of your ranged are focusing, if there's a point, like imagine, Srey is the tank here. If everyone were spread out in an arc, ignore Goku. If everyone were spread out in an arc, they couldn't really initiate on any of them, right? No one could really get poked, and they could all focus Srey safely if there was just an arc of heroes like right here with the two tanks standing in the front. So you want to do arcs when you can. You don't want to overextend. One of the big problems that people have in terms of positioning with collapsing on a specific focus target is they end up clumping or they end up in lines, and those lines are very vulnerable to counter engages. one of the reasons that we see Koreans do a very heavy brawl style where they're constantly diving backliners is because they're confident in their ability to dodge everything. If Koreans weren't confident in their ability to just dodge everything, they wouldn't have that playstyle because they would just die. But you see Dami, go into a backline and everything misses him. He just dodges everything. And so this problem of not having an arc doesn't matter because everything just misses, right? Or he gets a shield or they have a sank. Like they coordinate around that problem of how to dive a backline without dying. And the process starts for them in the draft. But it also just starts with consistently dodging things. I remember Saki did an interview when they lost at Summer Worlds, and he says Saki, had the best KDA ratio of any professional player at the time. He never died. I'm thinking of Crazy Moving. I said Saki. I think of Crazy Moving. He never died. He did a lot of damage, but he didn't support his team in the same way that players like Dami did. And he realized that if he played more aggressively and just dodged everything, he could actually play better. He thought he was playing fine. He realized there was another level that he could be playing at. And it came down to this, yes, I'm playing safely, but I'm not doing as much as I could because I'm not just going deep and dodging everything. I don't have that level of mechanical excuse. He didn't think it was possible. That was the interview. That was the gist of the interview. So if there had been an arc here, right, this grouping wouldn't have happened because they would have ended up trickling out of the entrance one at a time, or the exit here one at a time. Instead, they all got clumped, swung on, and just deleted. Right? If they had had a nice arc, instead of all being kind of clumped on the upper side here, it would have been significantly different because the retreat... Also, that might have been a comms issue. If the retreat was called and then some people followed it right away and some people didn't, you can end up with clumping. One of the reasons I have really good comms. There was actually everyone memed it, but the 4-man boss stun Superstars experienced against Tempo Storm on Sky Temple. It was actually Superstars didn't warm up. Normally teams have warm up scrims. Superstars actually did not warm up scrim, so that was just literally their first game of the day as a team. And the call was Srey eat the stun. That was the call because that way Zarya could shield and get energy. And Faye thought the call was Faye eat the stun because Faye and Srey sound really similar. And I don't know what Iacona did hitting the stun. I don't know why Iacona hit the stun. Maybe he just wanted to be part of the team. I don't know. But they ate a 4-man boss stun, and the game ended up ending at that point. But that game was pretty much already over. If you watch the early game, you'll notice that Superstars rotations are all really, really bad. It's pretty obvious they hadn't warmed up. Is Team Expert really good at drafting, as everyone says? I found quite a lot of the drafts kind of strange, and some of them I thought they lost quite convincingly. Still, everyone praises them very much for drafting. Is there something I'm missing, and are they better than other EU teams? Yeah, Team Expert is an amazing team when it comes to their drafts. There's really no other way to put that. Team Expert just has some of the best drafting in the world. I would maybe argue that ADRD is the best drafter in EU by a decent margin. And it comes down to two things. One, Team Expert has a really good handle on the game in terms of what works and what doesn't. Right? They have a really good granularity of what heroes can do what. Can this hero solo this hero? Can this hero do this? Do these heroes able to do... can this hero do this? Can this hero do that? What does this allow us to do? They'll pull out, odd picks sometimes, or what seem like odd picks. But the other thing that is really important about Expert is they practice all the time. If they have a spare couple of hours, they'll go do scrims. They'll practice. They'll try at every possible moment to practice as much as they possibly can on as many heroes as they possibly can. So not only do they have this amazing, clever mind in ADRD when it comes to drafting, but they can pull out picks that people haven't seen for a while and be crisp on them because they do practice their hero pools significantly. One of the reasons everyone knows it now, but Blade is potentially getting replaced. Blade just didn't have that same amount of drive. He resented, in some ways, I guess, the amount of practice. He just didn't feel motivated to practice as much as the rest of the team was doing, and so the team started talking about replacing him. Blade, by the way, has been absolutely on fire. If you've watched Blade's games the last couple of weeks, his play has been exceptional. We talked about it a lot last week on his Sonya play in particular, which was really, really strong. But yeah, Blade has been doing really, really well now. Unfortunately, he wasn't necessarily doing great before, but this sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes a positive push isn't enough. Sometimes a negative push is actually, oh, my team wants to replace me, and his response to that has been to just release his inner beast mode. He's been playing exceptionally well. But Team Expert has some really interesting, clever drafting. Yes. They make mistakes, though. Pretty much every team makes mistakes in drafting, at least occasionally. And in some ways, they can develop these fixed habits of having specific strategies on a given map or specific counters that they like that are very, very effective. But if you're anticipating them coming in the draft, you can sometimes draft around them. So Team Expert is a very, very good drafting team, but it's something that you need to drafting something you need to come back and constantly reanalyze to be really good at it. And I think it's possible Team Expert hasn't done that in a little while, and so they're starting to show some of the chinks in their armor. Tempo Storm versus Superstars, end of game 3. One member gets caught while retreating and his team comes back to help disengage, but eventually just dying one by one. My thought watching live was they should have just left one to die. You should, since the other 4 were diagnosed. But I mean, that's an open core, right? They had the keep down. This is game 3, Tempo Storm versus Superstars. We can talk about this. There's actually a lot of misplays here, like at the very, very end. Make sure this is on stream. Yeah, okay. There were a lot of misplays here at the very, very end of this game. Not there. So they're doing a really smart thing here, which is pressure with the poke that they have and the fact that they have this great escape in the form of portals and get the keep, right? They're doing a really clever, good thing here. And they keep doing it, they keep doing it, they keep doing it, and eventually they do get the keep. And there's been some criticism of Iacona, and Dread's criticism, which I agree with, was Iacona's a very good healer. He's a very good support player. But he never really tries to make plays for his team. He just stands in the back, does his healing thing, and backs up. He's trying to heal, he's trying to save Goku here, and doesn't get in the portal. And I don't understand right here why he doesn't get in the portal. I also kind of don't understand why he's so far away from the wall, right? We talked about this position thing. Whenever you're a Lucio, especially against someone who has roots, you want to be as close to walls as possible. He has party mix. It's finished. He could have been healing his team and potentially gotten that boop and then backed up this way. Even if he'd been riding the wall, if he'd had that wall speed, especially if he had that wall speed, he could have gotten on the wall, come back, booped. I'm not sure that boop was even necessary, and then just left. They can't catch up to him when he's on the wall. He has the move speed from wall ride, which stacks with his speed boost. They just could not have caught up to him, right? My criticism here is, why is he so far away from the wall? And I think that the hallmark of good Lucio players, something you should always look at, is how often are they on a wall. If a Lucio player is on a wall the majority of the time, he's always looking for a wall to be on, they're a good Lucio player. We've seen this from Mary Day, we've seen this from Soy, we've seen this from Bakery. They're always trying to be on a wall. I think Iacona not being on Iacona not being on a wall here was the number one problem. And they try so hard to get out of here. Look at, he's still on a wall. There's a wall right there. There's a wall right there. If he just went up and over, he would be on the wall. But that is an open core. That is pretty much a guaranteed Dragon Knight if they do lose someone there. They can potentially play Ringer on the Rosie. They have false out with Epic Mount. With 1 global to 0, I would have left him to die and risked it, but that just wasn't the call they made. If that had been 1 global to 0 the other way, that would have been pretty much a guaranteed loss because Dragon Knight could have ended the game pretty easily. But I think the fundamental question is there, why wasn't Iacona on a wall? Right? If you're playing Lucio, you need to be on a wall pretty much 90-95% of the time, ideally. You never want to be sitting in the middle a lane or whatever. You want to be near a wall. It's kind of your only escape mechanism. Another question about the portal. I feel like I answered that. I remember you saying at some point last week something effective. Dread is spot on in his criticism of NA macro. Can you remind us what that was and show some examples? Dread's. Do you think June blinking between him and the wall was intentional to block the wall? Yeah, absolutely. So this is what happened. You guys can see what is being talked about here. June is right here. He gets the blink. He gets the Twilight Dream. He was going for the blink dream no matter what, but his positioning is absolutely. He can't get fully enveloped here because the wall's in the way, but he also does block Iacona from getting anywhere near the wall. That is the sort of thing June thinks about. June on Malf is one of the scariest things I've ever seen. Like, literally in the entire game. June is such a good Malf player. His positioning is so point. I mean, he'll pre-cleanse and then ice block a gust and then be in position for a Twilight Dream. It's really scary. And that is, as a support player, he knows when he plays Lucio, he's on a wall. If you watch June play Lucio, he's on a wall like as frequently as possible. So body blocking the wall is definitely something he would have considered. So Dread's criticism of NA macro, which I agree with pretty much 100%, is they don't respect it enough. And they never draft sieging compositions. They never draft compositions that are designed to win the game by playing the map. They always draft compositions designed to win by winning the objective or winning a fight. And then winning the objective as a result. Do you think you can do a quick analysis of SSS Medivh player? You cannot do a quick analysis of a Medivh player. That's not possible. If people really want to do an in-depth review of a particular game, I may be able to do that as a replay analysis on a different day, but there's a lot of content to get through here. What's a good example? I'm trying to think of games that happened this week where macro was obviously flawed. I mean, Niventic's macro is always bad. That's sort of cheating, though. I can't just pick on Niventic every single week. Gives you an idea of how strong a team Niventic is, actually, that macro is so important in the game, and they're always bad at it, and they consistently still have close games. And even, they take games. It's not like Niventic loses every single game. They're 1-3 here versus No Tomorrow, and they took that game purely off of team fighting, despite the fact they were behind pretty much the entire game. Yeah, I can't think of any specific examples that are fair for the week. Because Superstars macro in game 1, for instance, on Sky Temple is really bad. Their rotations were really, really poor. But they hadn't scrimmed, right? They hadn't done any sort of warm-up. So it's not 100% fair to talk about that. We're going to do one thing in game here. I'm going to start loading this up and fast forwarding it so that we can see the Murabot in all his glory and talk about the boss reset that did happen. A lot of people thought the boss was bugged. He wasn't. It's actually the nature of the way VP is coded that caused it to work the way it did. But we do have to fast forward through a good bit of the replay. I apologize for the loud music in advance. There we go. So that's just going to take a little while. All right. Other questions from the Reddit thread. What in draft counters Murabot? We'll get to that. Are NA results based mainly off mechanical skill, shot calls, and drafts, or memes? For instance, we saw BSEP take out Team 8 after getting dumpstered by Freedom, and No Tomorrow become significantly stronger after getting a murdered bot. I don't know if No Tomorrow became significantly stronger after getting a murdered bot. I feel like GFE started playing oddly against a bot. I feel like they were hesitating and questioning if they wanted to go all out in a sense. Dread even said it during the cast. There's no way the GFE wins this game. Even if they win it, people are going to be like, well, it was against a bot and it was close until they had a bot, right? There was no winning in at least the public mind. You could win officially, but not outside of that. But I would say that most of NA's wins are actually based off purely mechanical skill for the vast majority of teams. Tempo Storm, I think it really is their shot calling. The mines of Tempo Storm are really good at this game. Like, really good at this game. For Team 8, I would have said it was shot calling until these last couple weeks, but whatever magic they had in Season 1, they're missing it right now. There's something that they're not understanding about the game. They're not coordinating as well as they did. They're definitely missing. And when they do win, it tends to be mechanical in a lot of ways. So yeah, I would say the majority of NA teams have actually good mechanics. They have really good mechanics, and they don't necessarily have the best understanding of the game. They don't have the best shot calls. They don't have the best rotations. They certainly don't have the best macro play. They don't have the best drafts. There's numerous drafting errors in every single draft for HGC North America. Even Tempo Storm is the least offensive in this regard. Tempo Storm has the fewest mistakes of any team. But there's just a lot of really questionable decisions. Superstars on Brax's holdout, they thought they had a strategy with Sylvanas to try and force the Zarya to sort of come out. With the Zarya and the Sylvanas, they thought they could just push in and they would be able to outpush the Zagara. The problem is that 17 is greater than 13. 13 is the range on Zarya's grenades. 17 is Chromie's base range. As it turns out, if Chromie can just constantly poke a Zarya player and force you to back up and not siege, then Chromie's defense wins, at least temporarily, and meanwhile Zagara can just keep pushing, and Falset has the global, so if anyone overextends bottom, you can actually get a kill. Falset can fly in, meanwhile he's just pushing top with the Zag and guarding the Zag. It's one of those things where something can have a solid argument, it can seem like a good idea, and in reality it's not going to work. That's kind of where actually skip the fight. I was fast forwarding. That's kind of where we're at. NA has a lot of really good ideas, but they don't necessarily practice them. And then you end up in the situation where they have unpracticed ideas and it doesn't work out the way they intended. I really do wish replays. So here's the fight with the. I think this is the fight with the boss reset, right? We have a little bit of a bug on the thing. Everyone's actually alive right now. The boss. I think this is the fight anyway. This is not the fight. It was 20 versus 22. Maybe that was the fight, and I just came in too. I think that was the fight, and I came in too late. I gotta reverse it a little bit. All right, so we're getting near to the fight. This is the boss reset that everyone commented on. Some people thought this was a pause bug. Irho. Right there. He's currently in the game. He's going to DC again here in a second. Equinox aggro's the boss. It leashes. That leash doesn't count. And GFE decides to go for the boss. If they get this boss, and they have better boss control tools, right? Because they have Gust, they have Holy Ground. They should just be able to end the game with it, assuming they actually are alive. Wiz comes in for the check. Irho immediately pops Avatar. I don't know why Irho pops Avatar here. This is not the bot. Irho actually popped Avatar there. The boss goes through its first leash. That's leash number 1. Trees actually keeps it from leashing on purpose. Takes some aggro. Stun. And this is where he DCs. This is the part where Irho DCs. He's right over here. He's Murden bot now. And I think we're going to see in a second him get pinged. He starts clearing the wave, which is what you do when you've avatared with Murden. That's not normal Murden behavior. And here we have VP. So the thing to remember about VP is that for a variety of reasons that were causing bugs in the initial implementation of the game and the ability, it doesn't actually stop everything inside of it. Time just suddenly moves really slowly. But the third leash of a boss is instant. If a boss leashes for the third time, it instantly heals to full. We actually had a video way back in the day about how teams, when they're worried about getting invaded, should pre-leash bosses. Because if you leash the boss twice, then you can just leash the third time and it restores to full, even if you have to back up all the way. The enemy team can't keep it leashed and potentially steal the boss. Keep it from leashing and potentially steal the boss, right? So here we have VP 1. Right, 5. The boss's leash is basically a second. And VP is 5 seconds, but time's just moving really, 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 really slowly. It's not that time is stopped inside the VP game time. So the boss actually leashes in the VP correctly because it's not taking aggro anymore. No one's aggroed because everyone's stopped. And time is just moving really, really, really slowly. So Muradin's off in nowhere. Casanova goes in for the support, trying to get the kill on the Michael Udall. We do see Akaface gets a pretty big Twilight Dream off. And again, we're going to keep track. Irho is just, or excuse me, Muradin bot is just kind of in the middle of this fight, hitting his buttons. And actually, yeah. So we can actually see Muradin is just absolutely going ham on these people. Jumps out, disengages from the fight, doesn't aggro the boss, has his trade kicked in, and starts to back. Needs mana. The rest of this game, they do a lot of managing Muradin bot with pings. Muradin immediately starts to go top. Unless they wanted him to go top, bots will prioritize the objective quite heavily. It looks like they did get the ping on him, so now he's going to come into the bot. And they're going to go mid instead. It looks like they that guys. I contacted my ISP about that. They have not yet gotten back to me with what exactly is going on there. They just haven't done it. So I would expect teams to go for the objective, try and get as many shots as possible under the circumstances. Muradin has a really good escape. You can always get away. Carrier's team has a really good escape. So actually the split here is really, really good. This is pretty close to what a Muradin bot, an actual Muradin player would be doing. Right? I think he gets pinged here for the retreat. Yeah, so as soon as someone shows up, Fan in this case, they ping him for the retreat. They don't trust him to do the 1v1 and just live. Tiger JK almost kills Equinox here. Equinox is actually forced to pop Army. They're really doing everything they can to do the 1v1, and they just leave. Muradin's not in the front, not doing the war, but he is, following his team around. They're looking potentially to pressure the lanes, get the maximum catapult value if they can. Nice isolation here on Akaface. I think he doesn't have Blink available. He does have Blink available, excuse me. So he blinks out, does get out of here. Muradin with the hop in, keeps pursuing, and then disengages. Nice use of stone form there. And again, lots and lots and lots of pings. Still having ISP issues. It's just once a day. Like, once a day. Yeah, GFE had 3 people right there and didn't target the bot at all. It was right here. And I really do think GFE was trying not to focus the bot. They were essentially being nice about the DC. But that messes you up. Right? That dynamic of changing your playstyle based on the fact that the enemy team has a bot and it having to fundamentally changing what you would do otherwise can mess you up. And I think that's a big part of why GFE lost, honestly, because they ended up throwing on the boss, and they should have had better boss control because they have Gus, because they have Holy Ground. And they were just so thrown off by this whole situation. They end up winning the boss but losing the fight. Falstead pushing out lanes, has Fly available. Muradin bot is with the team. Again, he's just following around. One of the annoying things about bots, by the way, is they won't mount. If you mount, I think bots should be coded. Whoever they're following, if the person they're following mounts, they should mount. But they're actually going to wait for Muradin to get all the way here. They even use VP for the delay. Casanova just goes in, tries to get some free damage, burn cooldowns, leaves. We have another. That was a completely whiffed Twilight Dream. Actually, doesn't really hit anyone. And Muradin with the jump in. Initiates, ends up securing a kill there. Nice palm, but they end up getting the boss. Ends up being a 1-for-2 trade right now. And I don't understand the re-engage here for Equinox. Fan left. Fam is just like, I'm out. Right? If Equinox had left, he's trying to get on top of Tiger JK here. Akaface is going to be fine. I think Akaface got away into there no matter what. If Equinox had just gone this way instead and was alive, this would have been a 3-man defense on core with boss pushing, as opposed to a 2-man defense on core. Right? He would have had anti-magic shell. I think he should have had Iceman Fortitude at least once. I think that Equinox going this way and engaging without an escape is a pretty big deal. That was all the questions from the Reddit thread. If anyone in chat has other specific questions about any of the games, ask them to ask them.
We don't know any of us, and that's okay. Again, like, I'm not trying to brag here. I'm just trying to inspire a little bit of confidence.
It looks like the official Heroes of the Storm channel hosted Grubby right in the middle of my stream. I forgot I had that tab open. That was my bad. But yeah, that adjustment that GFE was forced to make, not targeting the bot, it really felt like it screwed up their shot calling. And there's a rhythm. I saw teams giving up Zarya on Braxis. Why? Let's go to Heroes. Zarya. Limited just to HGC. Matches. I mean, let's focus on the losses, right? Focus on the times that that they lost. Because Zarya basically wins the majority of the time on Braxis holdout. I really wish I could do just map. It's one of the things. There's not yet a way to do. I don't think there's a way anyway to do just Zarya. I mean, there's just Zarya, just Braxis. Yeah, but I can't do it by tournament, so I have to like ignore. So Zarya wins for X Team. Tricked Esport loses with Zarya, and here's sort of the trend that's developing. Chromie is good against Zarya. Chromie, good against Zarya. Really heavy blow-up comps with lots of CC are good. Right? So you have Tronda is good against Zarya, ends up dying. One that comes to mind is SS on Braxis, got Zarya for free. Superstars, that's true. On Zarya, on Braxis got Zarya for free. And then Chromie was picked up by Gale Force. Chromie is good defensively against Zarya and Ariel both because of the poke damage. And I've been saying this for a long time. There are counters to Zarya. The reality is that the heroes that counter Zarya on Braxis, however, are not played in most metas. They're not played by most regions. And therefore, I said, and I remember saying this months ago, it's unlikely that we're going to see Zarya get countered on Braxis anytime soon. But she's become such a nuisance that people have actually started to think of ways of dealing with her. And she enables really, really good siege. The thing that disables really, really strong siege is heavy poke damage. There's not that many heroes in the game that have heavy poke damage where they outrange the Zarya, right? Zarya can't grenade them and counter-initiate and sort of make them trade and feel unhappy about their lives. Aren't Zarya and Chromie good against each other since Chromie deals predictable damage? Chromie's damage isn't predictable, though. That's the thing that people, for whatever reason, forget. You can look into the Fog of War and see the casting animation for Chromie's W, but her Q is bigger than vision range. Her range is bigger than vision range. So she can stand off the, like, from your perspective off the map, you can't see her, and she's just poking you. If you're not constantly moving and moving in an unpredictable pattern, good Chromie players will hit you consistently. They will keep doing that damage to you. And if you're low enough, then a shield's not enough to save you. So you're in a situation where you're just going to get absolutely chunked. I will say I don't think Hosty is a very good Zarya player. But even in other regions, we've seen this work, right? Team Expert beat Tricks Esports Zarya with Chromie. Chromie was 100% the reason that Team Expert won that game versus Tricked. And Trick's Zarya player is very good at Zarya. So Not really. Also, I'm not even sure if Cleansing Shield works on loop. Unstoppable Competitor works on loop, but I don't think we even saw... Did we even see loop in these games? There was a lot of Slowing Sands picked up. Yeah, right there. Slowing Sands. Very, very, very popular pickup. Cleansing Shield definitely does not work against Slowing Sands. It cleanses you. It only cleanses things that are already on you, and Slowing Sands just keeps reapplying. So it's not quite the same dynamic. Unstoppable Competitor is very good against Slowing Sands and loop, but that doesn't necessarily help your team out. And you keep track of the cooldown, right? You wouldn't loop a Zarya who had her own shield available. But if you go watch those games, just look at or download the replays, and you will see Chromie just botting Zarya all game long. How applicable is this to maps outside of Braxis 2 lanes? Not very. The thing about Chromie is that she's really good at anti-siege, but on most of their maps, you don't just walk up to the tower and start sieging just because you have a dominant 4-man, right? Because you really need to have 4 people there to walk up to the towers and just be like, this is our tower now, we're going to siege it. Or a Sylvanas, right? And then you do it with 3 people, you don't necessarily do it with 4. So on 3-lane maps, the best you can do is a tri-lane. And if you think they're going to go for a tri-lane with Zarya and another a healer and one other person, then it's going to be a reasonable counter. But on other maps, it's just not going to matter as much. Ariel is always going to be countered by Chromie, just because Ariel doesn't do well with poke. The best way to think of this is, if you can do damage to Ariel's team without taking damage in return, then you're winning. Because Ariel can't deal with poke unless her damage dealer, her battery, is doing damage to the enemy heroes while they're doing damage to them, right? That thing's that dynamic. One of the things I was actually a little bit disappointed by, I think pretty much every team went for Bursting Light at 7 on Ariel. The other 3 talents at her level 7 tier are designed to deal with situations where she's not generating enough hope. Bursting Light is, we have so much hope. We're good on hope. We just need to get this out faster. The other 3 talents of that tier are all about, we don't have enough hope. Can we get more hope somehow? And particularly with the double support comps we've been seeing, or Shielder plus Ariel, I would actually like to see some exploration of the different level 7 talents on Ariel that aren't Bursting Light. Yes, Bursting Light's the absolute best talent for the late game team fights, but it's Braxis. Are you really planning on winning the late game team fights? Is that your strategy? Is that what your draft is going to be able to do on this map? The answer should normally be no, right? There should be a better win condition than just we're going to win the team fights in the late game, because you're not guaranteed to get to the late game on Braxis. Rebellions are built on hope. Yeah. So, poke counters Zarya in many ways. Poke definitely counters Ariel. Ariel Zarya has been the new hotness that people have been playing with. And there's solutions. They exist. There's been a real reluctance by a lot of teams to play Chromie. And I think the teams that incorporate Chromie into their standard mage roster in the situations where she is good, because in the situations where Chromie is good, she's the best possible pick. Because there's no one else who does poke like Chromie. The next best thing is Li Ming in many ways, and Li Ming's poke is really predictable because it has a noticeable animation that travels. You can see it coming. If you're a Zarya player and you can't shield every single orb, then you're not a very good Zarya player. But the new hotness is Ariel Lucio. And again, I think we saw Ariel Lucio lose. Let's see here. Yep. I know we saw Ariel Lucio this weekend. Looking for the game. Yeah. Braxis holdout, Ariel Lucio. Lost to Zarya, funnily enough. They did win. This is just Braxis holdout, right? We're focusing kind of a little bit on Braxis holdout. But yeah, you need a 7. I think that Ariel Lucio is a fine composition, but I think there's definitely situations where there's a better level 7. to pick up, and we haven't been seeing enough diversity in Ariel's level 7 pickups. And I think that change would make a big difference. I also, come back echoing some of Dread's criticisms. Ariel's wave clear is okay. Lucia's wave clear is non-existent. You can punish double support comps that don't have enough wave clear with just better siege compositions, better macro play. There will come a day when we see Hammer picked up versus Ariel Lucio, and people are going to be like, oh, you just kill their buildings. Makes sense. So drafting double support is definitely really, really, really complicated. There's a lot of factors to consider, whether or not it's 3-lane map or 2-lane map, how your rotation is going to be, do you have enough wave clear, what heroes can burst through the potential sustain, or what heroes have enough personal built-in sustain that they can trade in the poke war and end up coming out on top eventually. Right? There's lots of theoretical answers to how to deal with the situation, but then execution can be really difficult. And this is going to be my new favorite thing to talk about. I'm not going to lie. My new favorite thing to talk about when it comes to high-level Heroes of the Storm in particular is there's lots of things that sound like they should work. Whether or not they actually work is a different story. But even if they should work and do work, if you can't execute them, they won't work. And we've seen a lot of compositions. We've even seen compositions run by the same teams. Rather, we've seen the same composition run by different teams, and it works for one team and not the other. And it came down primarily to execution. Gale Force Esports, with their Zarya comp at Western Clash, didn't work. They didn't do it correctly. Other teams with the exact same comp did it correctly. The game was total snowball. It looked like there was no chance that they could win, or they could lose, right? So, as much as Heroes of the Storm is a strategy game, and it is also an execution game, and execution has to be good enough to execute the strategy. Some strategies are harder to execute than others. Protect the Vala is a really simple strategy to execute. Vala plays aggressively, pokes everyone peels for the Vala, everyone heals the Vala. If Vala lives, you win. So it's a pretty simple to execute strategy. Medivh comps, pretty difficult to execute. Wombo combos, pretty easy to execute. Zeratul has to VP everything, and then everyone else has to just get their timing right, and the entire enemy team dimes. Nomia versus now Team Liquid, but was Misfits at Western Clash. They executed wombo combos, they won the game. There's a lot of things that are easy to execute and are really powerful, and there's a lot of things that are really hard to execute and are also really powerful. And having that breadth of execution requirements is sort of really interesting about Heroes of the Storm. It's one of the fundamental things about I think makes the game so much fun. But pro teams need to make sure that they can execute the hard things and the easy things, so they have a diverse drafting portfolio that they can pull from. Because if they don't have that, they're going to be in trouble anytime they go up against a team that does have that level of execution, because they are going to be able to draft around that weakness and play around that weakness of execution. And there's two aspects to that. There's just like the personal mechanics of being able to push your buttons at the right time, and the other one's the team mechanics of being able to coordinate really well with your team. We saw a beautiful play at Eastern Clash, L5 versus MB Black, where there was Slide, Mosh, Sank, Gust, all went off at the exact same time. It was to kill a Muradin. They literally spent 3 heroics to kill a Muradin, and they won the team fight as a result. But it was Slide Sank Slide Sank Mosh were literally cast at the exact same time, and then Falstad gusted everyone else away. Literally within a 1 second period, everything went off, and it was beautiful. It was perfect. Muradin died. I have never seen a play that clean from a North America team. I haven't seen it. And whatever L5's comms were that they made that happen so cleanly, that's something that North America needs to be able to look at and be like, okay, we need to figure out how we do that. And for all we know, the call was blow everything on Muradin, right? And everyone was just like, we know what that means, right? We've practiced this. We know what it is. Maybe the call was... isolate Mosh. I don't know. And Falstead knew that he was supposed to blow everyone away that wasn't already in the Mosh. And Tyrael's has a standing order that every time Mosh looks like it's going to, or every time Mosh is called for, he just sinks CTC, right? We don't know. We don't know how they have their comms arranged that they can consistently do clean plays like that, where everything in a 1 second time window is perfectly used by everyone on the team. I would actually, if I spoke Korean, I would dearly love to listen to L5's comms sometime and figure that out. But comms are really important, and we just haven't seen the same level of communication from North American teams. And I would like to. I would like North America to be one of the top competitive regions. It just hasn't happened yet. Any other questions? I think we got all the ones in the Reddit thread this week. Glad you guys showed up, even though it was Heroes of the Storm 2.0 release date. I want to try and keep this consistent. I'm going to be doing the HGC show every single week from here on out.